I was standing in the parking lot of St. Michael's Hospital when I saw them. My daughter Rebecca was walking toward me from the employee entrance, still in her navy blue scrubs, her hair pulled back in that same messy bun she always wore after a 12-hour shift. Beside her was my granddaughter Ava, clutching a small backpack and a stuffed rabbit I'd given her for her 8th birthday. But it was the look on Rebecca's face that made my chest tighten, the kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with physical tiredness and everything to do with the soul being ground down. "Dad," she said quietly when she reached me. Her voice cracked on that single word. I looked down at Ava. The little girl's eyes were red and puffy. She'd been crying. "Rebecca, what's going on? Why did you call me to come here?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew the answer wouldn't be good. She glanced down at Ava, then back at me. "Can we go to your place?" "I can't. I can't go home right now." "Of course," I said immediately. "But talk to me. What happened?" Rebecca's jaw tightened. James happened. Well, James and Vivienne. Vivienne, my daughter's husband's new wife. Or rather, his second wife. Since he'd divorced Rebecca 2 years ago, after 15 years of marriage. The divorce had been ugly, but they'd worked out a custody arrangement. Ava spent weekdays with Rebecca and weekends with James. Until now, apparently. "What did they do?" I asked, keeping my voice calm for Ava's sake. "They're saying I'm an unfit mother," Rebecca said, her voice barely above a whisper. "James served me with papers this morning. He's filing for full custody. Vivienne convinced him that because I work night shifts at the hospital, I can't provide a stable environment for Ava." I felt my blood pressure spike. That's absurd. The papers say that a night shift nurse with irregular hours can't give Ava the structure she needs. That Vivienne, as a marketing director who works from home, can provide better care. Rebecca's voice was shaking now. "James showed up at my apartment an hour ago with his lawyer. He said Ava would be staying with them until the court hearing. He said I could have supervised visits. He can't just take her," I said. "His lawyer said he could because of the emergency petition. Something about my work schedule constituting neglect." A tear rolled down Rebecca's cheek. "Dad, I'm a damn good mother. I've rearranged my entire life around Ava's needs. I work nights so I can be there when she gets home from school. I've never missed a parent-teacher conference, a soccer game, nothing." I looked down at Ava again. "Sweetheart, why don't you go sit in Grandpa's car? It's the blue one right there. I need to talk to your mom for just a minute." Ava nodded silently and walked toward my car, dragging her feet. When she was out of earshot, I turned back to Rebecca. "Tell me everything." She took a shaky breath. "James has changed since he married Vivienne. She comes from money, old Toronto money. Her family looks down on anyone who works with their hands or wears a uniform. She's made comments before about my job being beneath what Ava should aspire to. Last month, she told Ava that nurses are just people who couldn't become real doctors." My hands clenched into fists. I'd spent 40 years as a union electrician before I retired. I knew exactly what it felt like to be dismissed because of what you did for a living. "James used to defend me," Rebecca continued. "But lately, he just goes along with whatever Vivienne says. I think she's been working on him, convincing him that Ava deserves better than what I can give her. Better than a 2-bedroom apartment and a mom who smells like hospital disinfectant." "You're an emergency room nurse," I said firmly. "You save lives. There's nothing shameful about that. Try telling that to Vivienne. She keeps talking about how Ava should grow up in their house in Rosedale, go to private schools, have opportunities. Like I'm not giving Ava opportunities." Rebecca wiped her eyes. "The worst part is, I can't afford the kind of lawyer James has. Vivienne's family connected him with some fancy firm downtown. I looked them up. They charge $800 an hour." I put my hand on my daughter's shoulder. "Don't worry about the lawyer." "Dad, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm telling you. We're going to fight this, and we're going to win." Rebecca looked at me with those same eyes she'd had as a little girl when she'd scraped her knee or had a nightmare. Trusting, hoping I could fix things. "Let's get Ava settled at my place," I said. "Then we'll figure out our next move." The drive to my house in East York was quiet. Ava fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from crying. Rebecca stared out the window, occasionally wiping her eyes. I'd lived in the same modest bungalow for 35 years, ever since my wife Margaret and I bought it when Rebecca was a baby. Margaret had passed away 6 years ago, and the house felt too big for just me now, but I couldn't bring myself to sell it. Too many memories in these walls. I carried Ava inside and laid her on the guest bed, the same bed Rebecca used to sleep in when she was young. Rebecca tucked her daughter in, kissing her forehead. She cried all the way here, Rebecca whispered. She doesn't understand why her dad would do this. Kids shouldn't have to understand adult cruelty, I said. We went to the kitchen. I made tea while Rebecca sat at the table, her shoulders slumped in defeat. I don't know how to fight someone like Vivienne, she said. She's got money, connections, a perfect life. On paper, she and James look like the ideal family. And me? I'm a single mom working nights, living paycheck to paycheck, driving a 12-year-old Honda. You're also a woman who graduated top of her nursing class, I reminded her, who worked through the worst of the pandemic, putting herself at risk to save strangers, who's raised a smart, kind, compassionate daughter despite everything life threw at you. Rebecca gave me a weak smile. Thanks, Dad. But I don't think the court's going to care about any of that. They'll see Vivian's house and her income and her stability, and they'll think that's what's best for Ava. I set the tea in front of her and sat down. Tomorrow morning, I want you to call Martin Chen. Who's Martin Chen? The best family lawyer in Toronto, I said. Tell him I sent you. He'll take your case. Rebecca shook her head. Dad, I already told you. I can't afford. And I already told you not to worry about it. Dad, lawyers like that cost a fortune. I know you have your pension, but, Rebecca, I looked her in the eye. Trust me. Make the call. She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. I'll call him tomorrow. Good. Now get some rest. You've been up for almost 24 hours. I can't sleep, she said. Every time I close my eyes, I see Ava's face when James took her. She was so scared. She's safe now. That's what matters. Rebecca finished her tea and eventually went to lie down in my room while I took the couch. But I didn't sleep either. I spent the night thinking about my daughter and granddaughter and about a man named James who'd let a woman with money and status convince him to abandon his principles. I thought about Vivian too. I'd met her exactly once, at Ava's school concert 6 months ago. She'd been dressed like she was attending the opera, rather than a elementary school performance, wearing more jewelry than made sense for a Tuesday evening. She'd looked at me like I was the help when Rebecca introduced us. So you're the electrician, she'd said, in a tone that made it sound like an insult. Retired electrician, I'd corrected her. 40 years with Local 353. How quaint, she'd replied, then turned away to talk to someone else. I'd let it go at the time, but I remembered. The next morning, I made breakfast while Rebecca called Martin Chen's office. I could hear her on the phone in the other room, explaining her situation to what sounded like a receptionist. I understand he's very busy, Rebecca was saying. But my father, Douglas Whitmore, said I should call. He said Mr. Chen would. Yes, I'll hold. There was a long pause. Then I heard Rebecca's voice change, becoming more animated. Mr. Chen? Yes, thank you for taking my call. Yes, he's my father. I didn't know you. Oh, I see. That's very generous of you. Tomorrow at 10? Yes, I can make that work. Thank you. Thank you so much. Rebecca came into the kitchen looking stunned. Dad, what just happened? You got a lawyer, I said, flipping pancakes. He's not charging me anything. He said any daughter of Douglas Whitmore gets his services pro bono. Dad, how do you know Martin Chen? We've crossed paths, I said vaguely. What matters is that you've got good representation now. Crossed paths how? I slid pancakes onto a plate and handed it to her. Eat your breakfast. You need your strength. The meeting with Martin Chen went better than Rebecca had hoped. He was a sharp, focused man in his 50s who listened carefully to every detail of her case and asked pointed questions about James and Vivienne's petition. They're arguing work schedule instability, Martin said, reviewing the papers. And they've included some character witnesses who'll testify that night shifts are inappropriate for a single mother. That's ridiculous, Rebecca said. Thousands of single parents work nights. I agree. But we need to counter their narrative. They're going to paint a picture of an exhausted nurse who's never home, who leaves her daughter with babysitters and neighbors. We need to show the court the truth, which is that you're a dedicated mother who's structured your entire life around your daughter's needs. I'll need statements from Ava's teachers, her soccer coach, anyone who can speak to your involvement in her life. I'll also need your work schedule and evidence that you've never missed important events. I have all of that, Rebecca said. Good. We'll also need financial documentation. They're going to argue that their household income provides better opportunities. We need to show that Ava's needs are being met. Rebecca's face fell. I can barely afford my apartment, Mr. Chen. How am I supposed to compete with a marketing director and a senior software engineer? Martin leaned forward. Rebecca, courts don't award custody based on who has more money. They award based on the child's best interests. And a child's best interest is to be with the parent who loves them, knows them, and has been their primary caregiver. That's you. Over the next 2 weeks, Rebecca and Martin built their case. I spent time with Ava while Rebecca worked, helping her with homework and listening to her talk about how much she missed her mom's apartment, her own room, her routine. I like Dad and Vivian's house, Ava said one evening while we were doing a puzzle together. It's really big and pretty, but it doesn't feel like home. Why not, sweetheart? Because Vivian is always worried I'll mess something up. Like, I can't eat snacks in the living room because the couch is expensive, and I have to take my shoes off as soon as I come in the door, and she gets upset if my toys aren't put away exactly right. Ava fitted 2 puzzle pieces together. Mom's apartment is smaller, but I can be myself there. Mom doesn't care if I spill juice or if my books are messy. Your mom cares about you, not about things, I said gently. I know. That's why I want to live with her. Ava looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Grandpa, can you make the judge understand that? We're going to try, sweetheart. We're going to try very hard. The court date arrived faster than I would have liked. Rebecca had the day off, and we drove downtown together, Ava staying with a trusted neighbor who'd agreed to provide a statement for our case. James and Vivian were already there when we arrived, sitting with their lawyer in the hallway outside the courtroom. Vivian looked like she was dressed for a board meeting, all sharp edges and expensive fabric. James looked uncomfortable in his suit, avoiding eye contact with Rebecca. Their lawyer, a stern woman named Patricia Holbrook, approached Martin. Counselor, I assume you've advised your client that this hearing is really just a formality. The evidence clearly shows that our clients can provide a more stable environment. Martin smiled pleasantly. I've advised my client that the evidence shows she's been an exemplary mother for 8 years, and the court will recognize that. Patricia's smile was cold. We'll see. The hearing was held before Justice Catherine Morrison, a woman in her early 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes. She listened to Patricia Holbrook's opening arguments about Rebecca's work schedule, about the opportunities Vivian and James could provide, about the importance of stability. Your Honor, Patricia said, my clients can offer young Ava a home in one of Toronto's finest neighborhoods, access to excellent private schools, and most importantly, a mother figure who's available during normal daytime hours. Miss Whitmore works from midnight to noon 3 to 4 days a week. When is she supposed to help with homework, attend school functions, be present for her daughter? Then it was Martin's turn. He stood up with a folder in his hand. Your Honor, the petitioners want you to believe that a nurse who works night shifts is somehow neglecting her child. Let me present you with the reality. Rebecca Whitmore has attended every single parent-teacher conference since Ava started school. She's never missed a soccer game, a school concert, or a birthday party. She volunteers as a room parent. She helps with homework every afternoon when Ava gets home. She makes dinner, does bedtime routines, and is there every morning when Ava wakes up. Martin pulled out documents. Here are statements from Ava's teacher, her soccer coach, and 3 of her friends' parents, all attesting to Rebecca's constant presence in her daughter's life. Here's Rebecca's work schedule, which shows that she specifically requested night shifts so she could be available during Ava's waking hours. And here's something else. He handed another document to the judge. This is a letter from the chief of emergency medicine at St. Michael's Hospital, describing Rebecca's exceptional work during the pandemic, when she volunteered for extra shifts despite the risk to her own health. It also mentions that she was offered a promotion to a day shift supervisory position with higher pay, which she turned down because it would have meant less time with Ava. Justice Morrison read through the documents carefully. Then she looked at Patricia. Counselor, you're arguing that wealth and availability during business hours make better parents? I'm arguing that stability, because if that's your argument, then every nurse, police officer, firefighter, and shift worker in this city is an unfit parent. Is that your position? Patricia faltered. No, Your Honor, but Let me ask you something else. Where was your client, Mr. Hartley, for the first 6 years of his daughter's life? According to the custody agreement from his divorce, he had Ava every other weekend and one evening per week. That's considerably less than Miss Whitmore's involvement. Why is he suddenly concerned about her stability now? James shifted uncomfortably. Vivienne whispered something to him. Patricia cleared her throat. My client has remarried and is now in a position to provide more consistent care. Consistent care provided by his new wife. You mean? Mrs. Hartley has graciously agreed to take on a maternal role. Ava already has a mother, Justice Morrison said sharply. She looked at Rebecca. Miss Whitmore, does your daughter want to live with you? Yes, Your Honor, Rebecca said quietly. Very much. And are you currently able to provide for her needs? Yes, Your Honor. We're not wealthy, but we're comfortable. She has her own room. She's fed, clothed, and loved. Justice Morrison made some notes, then looked at both lawyers. I'm going to talk to Ava privately in my chambers. Court will recess for 30 minutes. We waited in the hallway while the judge spoke to my granddaughter. Vivienne was on her phone, looking irritated. James paced. Rebecca sat with her hands folded in her lap, praying silently. When we were called back in, Justice Morrison looked tired. I've spoken with Ava, she said, and I'm going to be very clear about something. This court's primary concern is the best interest of the child, not the financial comfort of the adults involved. Ava has expressed a clear preference to live with her mother. She loves both her parents, but her primary attachment is to Rebecca Whitmore, who has been her constant caregiver since birth. Vivienne's face went red. James closed his eyes. Furthermore, Justice Morrison continued, I find no evidence of neglect or instability in Miss Whitmore's care. Working night shifts as a medical professional does not constitute abandonment. Miss Whitmore has organized her life around her daughter's needs, which is exactly what good parents do. The petition for custody modification is denied. The existing custody arrangement remains in place. Rebecca let out a sob of relief. I put my arm around her shoulders. However, the judge said, looking at James, I'm concerned about the motivation behind this petition. Mr. Hartley, if you want to be more involved in your daughter's life, that's admirable. But you don't achieve that by trying to remove her from a loving, stable home. Work with your ex-wife to find more time with Ava. Don't weaponize the court system because your new wife has opinions about nursing as a profession. James had the decency to look ashamed. Vivienne, however, looked furious. Outside the courthouse, Rebecca hugged me tightly. Thank you, Dad. Thank you for believing in me, for getting me Martin, for everything. You didn't need me to win that case, I said. You're a good mother. That speaks for itself. But the lawyer was necessary because James hired a shark. But the outcome was never in doubt. Not really. We picked up Ava from the neighbor's house. When we told her she could go home with her mom, she cried happy tears and wouldn't let go of Rebecca. That night, after I'd driven them back to Rebecca's apartment and helped carry in some things we'd kept at my place, Ava hugged me goodbye. Grandpa, she said, when I grow up, I want to be a nurse like Mom. Is that okay? Sweetheart, I said, kneeling down to her level. That's more than okay. That's wonderful. Your mom helps people every single day. There's no more important job in the world. Vivienne said nurses are just people who couldn't be doctors. Vivienne is wrong. Nurses are people who choose to be on the front lines of caring for others. They're the ones who hold your hand when you're scared, who stay with you through the long nights, who remember your name and your story. Doctors diagnose, nurses heal. Don't ever let anyone tell you it's not enough. Ava smiled and hugged me tighter. After they went inside, I sat in my car for a moment before driving away. I thought about calling it a day, heading home to my quiet house. But there was one more thing I needed to do. I drove to a coffee shop in Yorkville, one of those expensive places where a cappuccino costs $8. I ordered one anyway and sat at a table by the window. 15 minutes later, Martin Chen walked in. He spotted me immediately and came over with a smile. Douglas, he said, shaking my hand. Good to see you. Thanks for taking Rebecca's case. Martin, are you kidding? After what you did for my daughter, I owe you everything. He sat down across from me. How is Rebecca doing? Better now. She's got her daughter back where she belongs. Martin shook his head. That Vivienne woman is a piece of work. The entitlement in that courtroom was breathtaking. People like her think money and status make them better than everyone else, I said. They've never had to work hard for anything, so they don't respect people who do. Well, she learned a lesson today. Justice Morrison destroyed her argument. Good. I took a sip of my overpriced coffee. I appreciate you doing this pro bono. Douglas, you saved my daughter's life. When Melissa had that accident and needed emergency surgery, you donated blood. You sat with my wife and me for 18 hours. You made sure we had everything we needed. You were a stranger, just another person in the waiting room. But you treated us like family. I'll never forget that. You would have done the same. Maybe. But you did do it. So when your daughter called and said she needed help, there was no question. I was going to make sure she got the best defense possible. Martin leaned back. Besides, cases like this are good reminders of why I became a lawyer. To protect good people from bad situations. We talked for a while longer, catching up on our families. Martin's daughter, Melissa, was now a resident at St. Michael's Hospital, following in the footsteps of the nurses who'd saved her life. Funny how things come full circle. When I got home that night, I thought about everything that had happened, about Rebecca's strength, about Ava's resilience, about how close we'd come to losing something precious because one woman thought she was better than us. But here's what people like Vivian don't understand. Wealth doesn't make you superior. Working with your hands doesn't make you inferior. What matters is how you treat people, how you show up for the ones you love, how you contribute to the world. I'd spent 40 years as an electrician. I'd wired hospitals, schools, apartment buildings. Every time someone turned on a light switch, or plugged in a phone charger, or used an electrical outlet, there was a good chance I'd been part of making that possible. I'd helped build this city, literally connecting the wires that keep it running, and I'd raised a daughter who saves lives, who works exhausting shifts to help strangers in their worst moments, who chose a hard profession because she wanted to make a difference. That's not something to be ashamed of. That's something to be proud of. 3 months later, Rebecca called me with unexpected news. Dad, you're not going to believe this, she said. James is getting divorced. Again. From Vivian? Apparently she's been having an affair with her business partner for the past year. James found out and kicked her out. He called me yesterday to apologize for everything. He said Vivian had been manipulating him, convincing him I was a bad mother so she could play happy family with Ava. How do you feel about that? Honestly, I feel bad for him. He got caught up with someone who saw Ava as an accessory, not a person, but I'm glad he finally saw the truth. Is he going to be more involved with Ava now? We're working on it. He wants to do better. We'll see if he follows through. I hoped for Ava's sake that he would. Every child deserves parents who show up, who try, who put their kids first. That weekend, I took Ava to the park like I did most Saturdays. We got ice cream and sat on a bench, watching other kids play. Grandpa, Ava said, licking chocolate ice cream off her cone. Can I ask you something? Always. Why did Vivienne not like Mom's job? I thought carefully about how to answer. Some people think certain jobs are more important than others. They think if you wear a suit to work, you're better than someone who wears a uniform. But that's not true. Why do they think that? Because they've never had to struggle. They've never had to work hard for what they have. So they don't understand the dignity in honest work. I looked at my granddaughter. Your mom is a hero. Ava. She helps people when they're at their most vulnerable. She comforts them when they're scared. She saves lives. That's not a job to be ashamed of. That's a calling to be proud of. I'm proud of her, Ava said. Good. Don't ever let anyone make you feel like helping people is less important than making money. Because at the end of your life, nobody remembers how much you earned. They remember how you made them feel. They remember if you were kind, if you were there when they needed you, if you made a difference. Ava finished her ice cream and leaned against my shoulder. I love you, Grandpa. I love you too, sweetheart. As I sat there with my granddaughter, I thought about the lessons we pass down through generations. About teaching our children to value character over status, kindness over wealth, substance over appearance. I thought about my wife, Margaret, who'd been a teacher for 30 years. She'd always said that the measure of a society is how it treats its caregivers and its educators, its nurses and its teachers, the people who do the essential work that holds everything together. She would have been proud of Rebecca, proud of the way she fought for her daughter, the way she refused to be shamed for her profession, the way she stood up to people who thought they were better than her. And she would have loved seeing Ava grow into a young girl who understood that worth isn't measured in dollars and cents, but in the impact you have on others. That's the real inheritance I want to leave behind. Not money or property, but values. The understanding that every honest job has dignity, that helping others is the highest calling, that you judge people by their character, not their bank account. Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to make our way in this world. Some of us do it in suits, some in scrubs, some in work boots and tool belts, but we're all worthy of respect. We're all deserving of dignity, and anyone who can't see that is the one with the real poverty, poverty of spirit, poverty of empathy, poverty of understanding what actually matters in life. Rebecca learned that lesson the hard way, but she came through it stronger, more confident in who she is and what she does. She doesn't apologize for being a nurse anymore. She wears her scrubs with pride. And Ava? Ava learned that her mom is her hero, not in spite of her job, but because of it. She learned that the people who do the hard work, who show up every day to serve others, are the ones who really hold the world together. Those are lessons worth more than any trust fund, any fancy house in Rosedale, any private school education that Vivian could have offered. Because you can't buy character. You can't purchase integrity. You can't inherit compassion. Those things have to be taught, modeled, lived, and that's exactly what we're doing one day, one lesson, one moment at a time.